Today we're going to demonstrate how easy it is to install spider tie. Like in all applications, first you need to snap your exterior lines to show where your wall is going to be laid out, and we're going to do that right now. Once you've snapped all your perimeter lines, now it's time to lay out where the stacks are to go. A couple things to keep in mind. There are a couple of notches on the outside here. This is where you're going to go ahead and establish your starter ties. They're going to lay right on the line. If your layout is 16 inches on center, it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly 16 inches on center. We're going to demonstrate the reason why, but around 16 inches on center or around 24 inches on center. The reason why we say that is sometimes your vertical bar gets in the way, and so you're allowed to move it one way or the other. We are not trying to have the end joints of the plywood land on a stack. We want them to land in between the stacks. So we'll demonstrate how to fasten these down. You want to pull from your outside corner 11 inches, and if you're pulling from an inside corner, 3 inches. It's the equivalent of the thickness of the wall plus 3 inches. I'll demonstrate. Here's the outside corner. Hold 11-inch mark. That will be our first stack. And then you just simply go, in this case, 16 inches on center. Again, we're not looking for a perfect layout. It's not necessary. When you get to your end, in this case it's an outside corner, you would come back 11 inches, and that would be your last stack. Now we happen to have a vertical bar in the way, so we'll just move it to 12, 12 and a half. That will suffice. We're using an 1.5 inch concrete nail. You can actually use any type of concrete nail, but this is for a powder actuated gun. If the concrete's older, most likely you're going to have to use the gun with a nail. But in this case, we poured these footings yesterday, so you can just simply pound them down. It's not necessary to get the nail all the way down. You just want to pound it down enough just to hold the starter tie in place. Find your layout and simply pound these down. Keep in mind that the notches on each side of the starter tie need to be on your line, because that is the exterior surface of the wall. It's not the end of the starter tie, but it's the notches on both sides. Now you're ready to snap in your first course of spider ties. And we're ready for our first course of rebar. Okay, we've pre-snapped 4 spider ties together. The reason we did that is these spider ties are 6 inches apiece. And this job calls for horizontal rebar at 2 foot on center. So we've already placed our first stack. So we're going to go ahead and snap in these 4 together and do that continuously down the line for our next row of rebar. Now we're ready to snap our next 3, technically 4 spider ties on top, but this wall happens to be a little bit taller than 4 foot. It's 4 foot 5 inches. So we want just a little bit of support above the top of the 4 foot plywood. So we're going to snap in 3 and then put a modified piece on top of that before we drop in our rebar. If you were pouring a wall that was only 4 foot high, you wouldn't have to go 8 spider ties high. You would only have to go 7. It's not necessary for the spider ties to go all the way to the top because there's not that much pressure at the top of the form, and we take one of the starter ties and invert it upside down, and that gives us the necessary support. But in this case, as we mentioned, this wall is a little bit taller. So we took a spider tie and just modified it by chopping the legs off the top of it. And this will give us the support necessary, and it'll be a couple inches shy of the top of our finished plywood. But it gives us a place for us to drop our rebar. Now we'll place our last row of rebar at the top, and then we'll be ready to attach our plywood. And at this point, you might want to just take a second or two and line the stacks up a little bit better. Just make it easier when you put your tool in there so the tool doesn't have to do all the work.